Warning: the Hayes Nation may stimulate personal growth and prosperity. Participation is strongly advised.
On the show today, I'm talking directly to the church, not Republicans, not Democrats. I'm talking to Christians. As Christians, many of us have been taking the wrong approach to our problems with politics and our culture. I'm going to show you a number that ought to make every believer in this country sit up straight. 62% of America still calls itself Christian. We are not a minority. We are not persecuted into silence. We are the majority, and we're acting irresponsibly, and many of us don't even know it. I'm going to show you how many Christians didn't even bother to vote, and how few votes it actually takes to flip an election, a school board, or a city council. Our culture is in serious decay, and our freedom to worship and to raise families are tied directly to it if we don't come together and act now. On this episode, I'm going to take you back to Joseph, Esther, Nehemiah, and Daniel, men and women who had every excuse in the world to sit it out and refused. And I'm going to deal with the excuse I hear from good, faithful Christians every single week. This world is not my home. I'll show you why that's true, but it's not permission to sit on the sidelines and watch our nation crumble around us. By the end of this show, you're going to know exactly what your faith requires of you today, not someday, right this minute. All that and more, and it starts right now. Hey, welcome to the George Hayes Radio Podcast. I'm your host, George Hayes. We're broadcasting from the Bama One podcast studio in the great state of Alabama. If you want to reach me directly, send me an email to georgehayes@usa.com. That's georgehayes@usa.com. And if you're watching on YouTube, leave me a comment below. And finally, go to hayesnation.com to join a community of like-minded individuals who believe in faith, freedom, and prosperity. Now listen, let me set the tone here before we get started. This episode is not comfortable. I'm not going to let politicians off the hook, but I'm not going to let the church off the hook either, including myself. Here's the premise. God is in control. That's true. This world is not our home. That's true too. But neither one of those truths was ever meant to be an excuse to check out. Heaven is our final address. This world is where we live right now. And for many of us, that means America. And what we do with the address we've got matters to Him. Too many Christians are sitting on the sidelines pretending what's going on in our society and culture is not their problem. If this trend continues, you will find that not only is it your problem, but your very right to worship and hold your beliefs will become a thing of the past. Getting those rights back may not be possible if this current trajectory in our culture is not curbed now before it's too late. So let's start with some numbers. 62%. That's the share of American adults who still identify as Christian. That's according to the 2024 Pew Religious Landscape Study. That is the most comprehensive religion survey in the country, 62%. It's not a remnant, and it's not a persecuted minority hiding in catacombs somewhere. That is a majority. Nearly 2 out of 3 of your neighbors calls themselves a follower of Jesus Christ. But here's the gut check. Barna Group, one of the most respected research groups in evangelical circles, asked an even harder question. Not do you call yourself a Christian, but do you attend church at least once a month, and does your faith actually matter to you? Only 24% qualify. Remember that. 62% identify, 24% actually practice. That gap between the label and the life, that's the whole problem in one number. We're not short on Christians, we're short on Christians who live like it. Now, here's some good news buried inside all of that. Gallup's 2025 confidence poll showed trust in the church actually ticked up to 36%, the first real jump since 2020. That's not where it should be, but it tells you something. People are not as locked into their skepticism as the culture wants you to believe. The door's open wider than it's been in years. We just have to walk through it. Now, let's bring this down to where it costs us something, the ballot box. In the 2024 presidential election, one of the most consequential in our lifetime, 65.3% of citizen voting age Americans voted. That's according to the U.S. Census Bureau. That means better than 1 in 3 eligible adults sat it out in a presidential year. It gets really bad in the years that actually shape your local school board, your city council, and your county sheriff. In the 2022 midterms, 52.2% turnout, less than half in some states. Here's the one that should really shake every believer to the core. Researcher George Barna at the Cultural Research Center at Arizona Christian University surveyed church-going population ahead of the 2024 election. His projection, as many as 32 million self-identified regular attending Christians were unlikely to vote. 32 million. That was a projection, not a final count, but even close to that number should terrify us. Do the math with me. In 2020, the national margin in the presidential race was around 7 million votes. Some swing states were decided by tens of thousands of votes. 32 million ballots left uncast on election day isn't a rounding error, it's a decision. Imagine for a moment what our body politic, our whole culture, would look like if Christians actually used their voice and their vote to challenge it. We are deciding by our own absence to hand the culture over to whoever shows up. Somebody's going to say, George, my one vote doesn't matter. Tell that to a school board seat decided by 40 votes. Tell that to a city council race decided by the flip of a coin. Local elections in this country get decided by rooms smaller than most church sanctuaries. Now, here's the excuse. I hear it from good people who love Jesus more than anything else. They say, George, this world is not my home. I'm just passing through. God is in control. Why should I get worked up about an election? Now, both of those statements are biblically true. Heaven is our home. God is sovereign. But neither one of those truths ever, not once, gave God's people a pass to disengage from where he put them. Let me walk you through the record. Noah didn't get to skip the ark because God was sovereign. He built it for decades, plank by plank. Joseph didn't get to wait for a government that shared his faith before he agreed to serve it. Sold into slavery by his own brothers, thrown into an Egyptian prison on a false charge, he ended up second in command in one of the most powerful pagan empires on earth. And he used that office to save an entire region from famine. Egyptians, Jews, everybody. He didn't refuse the position because Pharaoh worshipped false gods. He served with excellence, and God used that seat of government to preserve the very family that could have written him off. Moses didn't get to skip Pharaoh's court because God had already promised deliverance. He walked in again and again and said, "Let my people go." Esther didn't get to stay quiet in the palace because God was in control of the outcome. Her uncle Mordecai in the book of Esther, chapter 4, told her this: "For if you remain silent at this time, relief and deliverance for the Jews will arise from another place. But you and your father's family will perish. And who knows but that you have come to your royal position for such a time as this?" She risked her life and spoke. Nehemiah didn't fold his hands and wait for Jerusalem's wall to rebuild itself. He prayed first, then he picked up a trowel in one hand and a sword in the other and got to work. Daniel served under multiple pagan kings his entire adult life, dragged into exile as a young man, then rising to become one of the most trusted administrators in two successive empires, Babylon and Persia. He ate what his conscience allowed and refused what it didn't. When a law was passed specifically to trap him for praying to the God of Israel, he didn't hide it and he didn't fight it with a mob. He kept praying publicly and he let the consequences fall where they fell. That's engagement without compromise. Even Paul, writing letters about our true citizenship being in heaven, used his Roman legal citizenship as a tool, not a technicality. In the book of Acts, about to be flogged without a trial, he asked the officer plainly whether it was lawful to punish a Roman citizen that way, and the entire proceeding stopped. He knew his rights under Roman law, and he used them. Not one of those people used God's sovereignty as an excuse for their own passivity. Every single one of them treated sovereignty and responsibility as partners, not opposites. Scripture backs this up everywhere you look. The prophet Jeremiah, writing to Jewish exiles living under a pagan Babylonian government in Jeremiah chapter 29, verse 7, told them this: "Also seek the peace and prosperity of the city to which I have carried you into exile. Pray to the Lord for it, because if it prospers, you too will prosper." Did they listen? History says yes. Archaeologists have found the actual business records of that exile community. Tablets showing them building, farming, doing business, just like Jeremiah told them to. And the proof is sitting right in front of you. Daniel, Esther, Mordecai, Nehemiah, that generation took the instruction seriously, and God used every one of them. Jesus, in Matthew chapter 5, verses 13 through 16, called us salt and light. Salt that never leaves the shaker doesn't preserve anything. Light hidden under a basket doesn't illuminate a room. James chapter 4, verse 17 doesn't leave any wiggle room on this. If anyone then knows the good they ought to do and doesn't do it, it is a sin for them. Not neutral, a sin. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 2. When the righteous thrive, the people rejoice. When the wicked rule, the people groan. Paul, writing to the church in Rome, chapter 13, verses 1 through 7, tells us government itself carries God-ordained purpose, even a flawed human government. And in the book of Acts, chapter 5, verse 29, when government commanded what God forbid, the apostles didn't fold. They said, we must obey God rather than human beings. That's not disengagement. That's engagement with a spine. Even Jesus' own parable in Luke chapter 19, the parable of the 10 minas. The master's instructions to his servant before he leaves is, put this money to work until I come back. Stay productive. Stay engaged. Don't bury what I gave you in the ground. And look, this isn't just a biblical argument. Our founding fathers used this argument as well. George Washington, in his farewell address to the nation in 1796, told the American people flat out that you cannot separate faith from public life and expect the country to hold together. He said it plainly. Of all the dispositions and habits which lead to political prosperity, religion and morality are indispensable supports. He wasn't talking about a private hobby you keep to yourself on, say, Sunday morning. He was talking about the load-bearing wall this whole country was built on. The founders assumed and engaged faithful citizenry because they knew a free republic doesn't run itself. It runs on the character and the participation of the people inside it. Here's the bottom line. Biblical separation from sin was never meant to be separation from society. Jesus prayed his followers would be protected in the world, not removed from it. 62% of this country still call itself Christian. 24% actually live it out. 32 million of us were projected to skip the ballot box entirely. And every hero of the faith we just walked through refused to use God's sovereignty as an excuse for their own silence. Now, when we come back, I'm going to tell you that while no politician is perfect, your vote still matters more than you think. And your freedom to worship depends on it. I'm going to show you exactly why every tyrant in history eventually comes after the church. And I'm going to hand you a plan for what you actually need to do with everything we just covered. I'm your host, George Hayes. I'll be right back.
You're listening to the George Hayes Radio Podcast.
Faith, freedom, and prosperity. Those are not just words. They are the foundation to building a life of success and wealth. Faith is what grounds us, reminds us of our purpose, and gives us the strength to keep going forward even when things get tough. Freedom? Well, that's what's great about this country. The freedom to dream big, to take risks, and to do something that matters. And prosperity? Well, that's the net benefit when you give all the glory to Him. God wants us to thrive and prosper. This is why I created the George Hayes Radio Podcast. Every episode is packed with practical advice, motivation, and tools to help keep you grounded in faith, celebrate your freedom, and live a prosperous life. Now, if you're enjoying the show, do me a favor. Hit the subscribe button and share with a friend. And go to HayesNation.com to be part of a community of people who live these values every day. And remember, faith is your foundation. Freedom gives you room to grow, and prosperity is the blessing.
Hayes. The George Hayes Radio Podcast is on. Become a regular member of the Hayes Nation by following us on YouTube or your favorite podcast platform. Support the show by subscribing and smash that like button now.
Okay, well, welcome back to the show. Hey, if you want to reach out to me, it's georgehayes@usa.com. That's georgehayes@usa.com. I want to hear your story. And who knows, maybe I will feature you on an upcoming episode. Now, let me make clear something up front before I go any further, because I don't want anybody hearing this episode and thinking I've traded my Bible for a voter registration card. No president, no party, no movement, no candidate is the Messiah, and none of them are perfect. Let me say something else here. You may not like them, and they may hold a position you can't stand. But society is full of imperfect people, and every single name on that ballot is one of them. Sometimes the faithful thing to do is vote for the imperfect candidate who will do more good than harm. I've watched good Christian people turn political figures into idols, and I've watched other good Christian people use politics doesn't matter as an excuse to do absolutely nothing. Both of those are errors, and I'm not interested in either one. Here's the balance. Politics cannot save your soul, but political decisions can absolutely protect or destroy your religious liberty. They can destroy your parental rights, the sanctity of life, your right to speak, your right to worship, and whether your church can operate freely in this country. Somebody told me once, George, a fire extinguisher can't save your soul, but it'll sure save your house. Are you going to throw it out while the place is on fire? No, the answer is no. You keep it on the wall and you use it. Okay, let me hit this next part fast because I just did an entire episode on it. Collectivist systems, socialism, communism, whatever label you put on it, always promise the same thing: security, equality, relief from struggle. Now, it sounds compassionate to a generation that's never had to live under it. But here's the trap. The moment government becomes your ultimate provider, it becomes your ultimate controller. You cannot hand someone total responsibility for your needs without eventually handing them total authority over your life. And here's why authoritarian systems always eventually come for the church. Christianity declares there's an authority higher than the government. A Christian can respect the state. A Christian cannot worship it. And no regime demanding total loyalty can tolerate people who believe there's a king above the king. That's the whole argument in 60 seconds. Now, let's talk about what you actually do. Voting is the floor. It's not the ceiling. Register. Vote in every election, not just the presidential ones, but the ones nobody bothers to show up for. School board, city council, county sheriff, district attorney, etc., etc. Those seats shape your children's classrooms and your neighborhood's safety more than anything happening in a nondescript building in Washington. Now, here's something I want you to think about. If a strong majority of the 24% of practicing Christians, the ones already showing up to church, simply added consistent voting, school board attendance, and one town hall a year to what they're already doing, this culture as we know it would be unrecognizable in 5 years. Now, that's not pushing back on it, that's replacing it. We don't need a miracle, we need participation. Here's something else you need to understand. When Christians walk away from a classroom, a newsroom, a courtroom, a school board seat, that seat does not stay empty, and it does not stay neutral. Somebody fills it, and they fill it with their convictions, not yours. Every law reflects somebody's view of right or wrong. Every school teaches a worldview, whether it admits it or not. When we leave education, media, government, and the arts, those institutions don't become fair and balanced. They just get shaped by people who see the world completely different than we do. And here's why local matters even more than you probably think. Gallup's own research shows barely 1 in 3 Americans trust the federal government to act in their best interest. Trust runs higher, though still far from great, in state and local government. Washington, D.C. is not where the most winnable ground is. Your school board is, your city council is, your county courthouse is. This is not a new idea, by the way. It's one of the oldest ideas in this country. And right now, the current culture is occupying most of those seats, not God-loving Christians. America wasn't built top down. It was built town by town, county by county, church by church, long before Washington had any say in your daily life. The founders trusted local self-government because they just fought a war against a distant power that didn't know or care what they needed. We seem to have forgotten that instinct, and it's time for us to remember it. Go beyond Election Day. Attend a school board meeting. Call your representative respectfully but consistently. Support candidates who actually reflect biblical conviction, not just the loudest ones. Consider running for a local seat yourself. School board, city council, water district, whatever it is. Serve as a poll worker. Sit on a local commission or planning board. Support a pregnancy resource center in your community. Get to know your judges and your district attorney and know who they actually are. Those races decide more about your daily safety than anything on cable news. Teach your kids the Constitution and what it means. Share with them what the cost of freedom actually is. And look, do it with love, courage, humility, and truth. Don't share something because it helps your side. Verify it first. Bearing false witness doesn't become acceptable because there's an election on the calendar. Disagree without becoming cruel. Courage doesn't mean cruelty, and humility doesn't mean silence. You can hold a strong conviction and still shake a stranger's hand. Your political opponent is not your enemy. He's your neighbor, made in the image of God, and he needs the truth spoken to him in love, not silence dressed up as peace. And a quick word to the pastors listening. The pulpit isn't a campaign headquarters. I'm not asking you to endorse a candidate on Sunday morning. But silence is not neutrality either. Teach what Scripture actually says about justice, the dignity of life, marriage, truth, and the God-given limits of government. Shape convictions. Don't manufacture party loyalty, but don't go mute on moral clarity either. Now, here's what keeps me up at night, and I'm 63 years old, so I've got some runway to think about this. We inherited freedoms other people bled for. We did not build the First Amendment. We did not write the Constitution. We inherited it. And we do not have the moral right to enjoy it, then neglect it, and hand our kids a weaker country than the one we were given. And let's put our freedom in perspective while we're at it. Open Doors World Watch List for 2026 counts roughly 388 million Christians worldwide living under high levels of persecution right now. More than 1 in 7 believers on this planet. That's people who can be arrested for owning a Bible, fired for attending church, or killed for sharing their faith. We are not those people, not yet. But rights that go unused and unguarded have a way of eroding, quietly, one generation at a time. Gratitude for what we still have is not an excuse for passivity. It's a reason for stewardship. Ask yourself what kind of country you're leaving your children. Will they be free to preach, worship, speak, build a business, and raise a family according to their convictions? Or will they inherit our silence and wonder why we said nothing when the warning signs were everywhere? Let me say this straight to every Christian listening. Engaging this country, its politics, its culture, its public square is not optional. It's your duty. God gave you a voice and a vote for a reason. And sitting on the sidelines doesn't protect you from what's coming. It exposes you to it. Silence has never once made anyone safer. Pastors, ministers, church leaders, this one is for you. Your flock is watching this nation come apart while too many pulpits stay silent just to keep the peace. Now, that's not shepherding, that's abandonment. It's time to lead like men who actually believe what they preach. Stand up, speak the truth, and stop watching your people wander into a culture built to devour them. So here's my challenge to you. God placed you here, not in some other century, not in some other country, here, now, in America, with a vote, a voice, and a church down the street. Christians are still the majority, and we have the power to make a serious change for the good. Refusing to use any of that is not spiritual maturity, it's wasted stewardship. Right now, register if you're not registered to vote. Show up to one civic meeting you've never attended. Pray. And then act like Nehemiah did. Not one or the other, both. If the 62% of Christians all came together, the country would be saved. Okay, tell me which point hit you the hardest today. The numbers, the excuse we've been hiding behind, or the challenge to actually go out and do something about it. You can reach me at georgehayes@usa.com. I want to hear from you. Leave me a comment on YouTube. Which point hit you the hardest? What are you going to do about it? Thank you for being part of the Hayes Nation. I'm George Hayes. New episodes drop every Monday morning on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere you get your podcasts. Subscribe if you have not, and share this one because somebody in your life has been sitting on the sidelines telling themselves it's not their fight. Give it to them. And as always, keep that train rolling down the track because that light at the end of the tunnel might just be you. I'll see you next time.
It's time to smash that like button and subscribe. To share or leave comments, log on to YouTube at the George Hayes Radio Podcast or visit us online at hayesnation.com.